All right, let's do this real quick. 3506. $5W30 API SP. Start. Everybody's favorite. API SP. Let's go high dollar. API SP. That's the rating. If it meets the spec, it meets the spec. Let's go change some oil. Alright everybody, with that, let's go ahead and get started on today's video. Oil. Let's go. So, welcome back to the Driveway Engineer. I'm JR. Today, we're going to talk about everybody's favorite topic, oil. I really need to do something about these hood hinges. But that's not the topic of the video today. Today's video is about oil, and this is not really a video that I ever wanted to do, because oil is oil, but there's a lot to unpack, and I'm not a chemist, as I've told you guys before. As you saw in the intro, you know, the spec is on the back of the oil. If it meets the spec, it meets the spec. There's a couple of things that you need to know also. You'll see Dexos approved, that kind of thing. Let me get this Pennzoil bottle here. So the Pennzoil is not only Dexos approved, it's also, where we go, GM Dexos, Chrysler MS6395, Ford WSS. So what the companies do, what all that gibberish is a different testing specification, and they all, so there's a reason for, you know, the API SAE standards, but then each manufacturer goes ahead and tweaks them a little bit, and the cynical people will say they do that to get money, and it definitely costs money to have the testing done. So for instance, on the 3.6 liter Jeep engine, Pennzoil is the only one who's bothered to go ahead and do the WS testing to pass Fiat, Chrysler, or Stellantis's standards. Okay, it doesn't mean that Supertech isn't just as good. It just means that only Pennzoil's pass the standard, or Rotella. Also, conversely, doesn't mean that, you know, they are just as good. But there's a lot out there, and there's just literally, if you've ever seen Project Farm, if you haven't seen Project Farm, go look at them, and look at them critically. Like, Amsoil wins, but it wins by a hair, and it's just, you got to ask yourself, is it really that important, right? So it's come up a bunch of times recently. You know, springtime, people are getting their stuff out. My beautiful pear tree is blooming here. And people are changing their oil, and I've mentioned several times online, some of you guys have probably seen it, that this has Supertech in it and a Supertech filter. Actually, even that's not true, because when I built this, when I put it all together, I had a problem with the oil pump relief valve sticking, and it was building massive amounts of pressure and blowing my oil filter rings out, and all my oil would just go in the driveway. So what it had, even $15 Supertech got to be too much to just blow onto the driveway, and it has like some $9 Castrol in it, and it's been in there for 2 years. I shift the thing at 7,200 RPM. I do donuts, I do burnouts, you know, I just kind of beat on the thing a little bit and have fun. And I've not had a problem, because oil is oil, and if it meets the spec, it meets the spec. Not only that, there's only so many people producing oil. So like Quaker State, Pennzoil, they're owned by the same company nowadays. If you talk to an old timer, they'll be like, "Don't run Pennzoil." 100 years ago, Pennzoil had paraffin wax in it, and it was part of the geology of Pennsylvania. The oil that came up from the ground there had a wax in it, and it would build up residue in engines and cause failures, or at least be an attributor to failures. That's not the case anymore, right? This stuff's all coming from South Dakota or Venezuela or Lord knows where. The oil hasn't come out of Pennsylvania in a long, long time, though. And time marches on, right? Like the old song says. So, in my opinion, there's nothing that makes me want to pay more than what I pay for Supertech. It does fine. It meets all the specs. It's synthetic. The reason that it's so cheap is not because they cut corners. It's because Walmart goes to them and says, hey, I'm going to buy 11 billion gallons of these, so you're going to sell them to me for 11 bucks, and I'm going to sell them for 13 bucks. And, you know, AutoZones and stuff can't do that. They don't have that kind of scale. They can't operate on those kind of thin margins. But we'll go ahead and pull this out. The other thing I want to talk about is Lucas. People love additives for whatever reason. I think we all remember when the little gear cranky things used to be at AutoZone, the heavy duty. I want you guys, the reason I have this is I use it to oil my drill bits, actually. If you look, it is 50 degrees outside today. There we go. See how thick that is? Somebody on Bob is the Oil Guy did an oil analysis on this, and it came back as straight 50 weight. And by straight 50 weight, I mean straight 50 weight. It doesn't have any detergents in it. It doesn't have any friction modifiers in it. It doesn't have literally anything but straight 50 weight base stock. You see how slow it came out? 50 degree weather. Imagine how slow it comes out when it's, you know, 10 below. If it gets that cold where you live. But people are like, I had a lifter clatter or whatever, and I put this in and it stopped. Yeah, because you put straight 50 weight oil in your junk. Of course it stopped clattering. Let me see if I can set this tripod up here, and we'll go ahead and check the old dipstick. I'm really seriously have not checked the oil since I built this. I don't have an oil pressure gauge. I have a gauge, but it doesn't function. I know I have oil because it doesn't blow up. Look at that. That's still pretty clean. That's another thing people get really just fixated on is the color of their oil. And they want it to be clear. So they want to change it 53 times and run detergent through. And if anything, it looks a little overfull. I have been out driving it though. I don't know, oil turns black. That's, you know, it is what it is. You see, I'm covered in cobwebs here because this truck doesn't get driven like a normal, you know, if you're talking about your Silverado that you daily, this truck does not get driven like that amount. Yeah, I think that people overthink this like they overthink so many other things. You know, keep it simple. And realize that like 99% of the world goes down in the Jiffy Lube and gets Castrol GTX or Kendall or some other Bolt product pumped out of a 50-gallon drum into their shit. And they drive it for 120, 130,000 miles and don't have a major problem and trade it in. And it's over. The end. I mean, so, I don't know. You guys just got to calm down on the oil. It really doesn't matter. I mean, if you're doing land speed racing where you're holding that wide open throttle for 10 minutes at a time, you might convince me that it matters, but you know, for the stuff we're doing, I don't think so. I think I'll set you up under the truck and let you see the oil as it drains out, but I don't expect to see any real surprises here. I mean, it's oil, right? Let's go under the truck. Alright, so under the truck we can see my Chinese headers that are never ever gonna crash and the oil draining out. Sorry, there we go. So it appears black out here, and that's okay. It's oil. It gets dark. I mean, basically that's my recommendation about oil, is use some. Whatever makes you feel good. We'll be back in a moment here to wrap up. Alright, so when I poured the new oil, there's crap in the funnel. You know, I do a reasonable job, but whatever's in there goes in the engine. That's what filters are for. It's really, it's just really a simple thing. There's no need to make it complex, folks. This works for me. If spending $10 a quart on Joe Gibbs driven because he raced NASCARs and he knows oil, because you don't think that he's sticking some shit in a bottle from somebody else and marking it up for your hillbilly ass, works for you, then go ahead and enjoy. This works for me though, and it'll work for everybody. Just don't overthink stuff. Quit overthinking everything, folks. Anyway, hope you enjoyed. We'll see you next time on The Driveway Engineer. Thanks for watching.